Hey, imagine you're about to hand over the cleaning chore to a robot for the first time and you're sitting there wondering if that $900 plus gizmo will actually keep the floors clean or just sit in the corner sucking up dust bunnies. You've probably seen a dozen videos where these vac mops zip around, but you've also heard the horror stories about robots getting stuck on socks or spilling water on hardwood. So before you click add to cart, let's walk through what it's really like to live with the ECOVACS DEEBOT T30S AI Care, because I spent a week testing it in a 2-bedroom apartment that's got pets, kids, and a mix of carpet and tile. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest thing people worry about is whether the robot actually knows the difference between a spill you want it to mop and a rug that you'd rather have it vacuum. The T30S claims to have AI instant Re-mop that can spot a wet mess and go back later with a dedicated mop pass. In practice, it does a decent job of detecting visible liquid on tile. The first night I spilled juice while making a smoothie, the robot paused, scanned the area, and after a few minutes it launched a targeted mop cycle that left the spot dry. That's a solid win if you've got a kitchen where spills happen often. On carpet, the AI just defaults to vacuum mode, which makes sense because you don't want hot water seeping into pile. So for households with mixed flooring, the device actually respects the surface type instead of trying to mop everything. Suction power is another headline that gets thrown around. 11,000 paw sounds massive, and on carpet it does pull up the usual pet hair, crumbs, and even those fine sand particles that tend to get trapped in the fibers. I ran the robot across a hallway where my dog left a trail of fur and the debris bin filled up after roughly 30 minutes, which tells you it's not just a light dustbuster. The ZeroTangle claim is worth noting because the brush is designed to keep hair from winding up. In my 2-day test there wasn't any noticeable hair buildup, and the brush head stayed relatively clean, which is a relief if you have shedding pets. That said, the brush isn't completely immune to tangling. After a week of daily runs, a few longer hair strands did wrap around the rollers, so you'll still need to check it weekly if you have a lot of fur. Now let's talk navigation. ECOVACS calls it AIVI 3D obstacle avoidance, which basically means the robot has a camera and depth sensor to see stuff like shoes, toys, and the occasional cat. In my apartment, the DEEBOT learned the layout pretty quickly. The first 3 cleaning sessions were a little jittery. It bumped into a coffee table leg a few times, then adjusted its path after learning the obstacle's shape. By the 4th run it was cruising around the living room without a single collision, even when my toddler dropped a Lego block on the floor. So the learning curve is real, but it smooths out within a day or 2. If you have a very cluttered space with narrow aisles, you might want to clear a rough path the first time, because the robot can still get caught on very low-profile items like cords or very thin rugs. One of the biggest selling points is the Omni station that handles both self-emptying and water refilling. Traditional robot vacuums require you to empty the dustbin every few weeks. The T30S's station does it automatically. I noticed the bin emptied itself after the robot finished a full home cleaning, and the water tank refilled before the mop cycle started. The station also includes a hot water mop function so you can set it to use warm water for tougher grime. On my tile floor, the hot water mop helped lift a bit of dried cereal after a week of use, something a cold water mop would have missed. The flip side is that the station is a pretty large footprint, about the size of a small kitchen blender, and it needs a dedicated power outlet. If you're living in a studio or have limited wall space, you'll need to plan where it sits. Also, the station's water tank holds only about 400 milliliters, which means the robot can only mop a limited area before needing a refill, so you won't be able to mop an entire multi-room house in one go without the tank refilling between passes. Battery life is another practical concern. The T30S claims up to 260 minutes, but that's under ideal conditions. In my testing, on a mixed-floor home of about 1,200 square feet, the robot ran for roughly 150 minutes before returning to the dock to recharge, then continued where it left off. The recharge Andersum feature works, but you do lose a few minutes each time it docks. If you have a very large home or want a single run without interruption, you'll need to factor in that extra charging time. Who should splurge on this robot? If you have a busy